Thank you, Zachary.
Excuse me. Okay, friends, this is lecture 7, Notes on Nibiru. And the photograph here on the first slide is from our good friends at NASA, the American Space Agency, taken in 2020, as you can see, a little less than 5 years ago. And it's a really good Nibiru capture. It shows the two major moons of Nibiru on either side of the planetary body itself and the tail. It reminds me of a bird or maybe a stingray, something like that. So we have to thank NASA for these photographs. And what we don't thank them for is the cover-up, which they've been perpetrating for about the last 40 years plus. But that's another story. We can go to the third slide now. We don't have to stop the slide 2. That's just yeah, the overview. Let's go to number 3. All right. Now you may remember the lecture about the Earth's dark twin. I gave that in late May. It's been recorded, so you can refer to it if you missed it or you forgot it. And we have some pretty good photos from different years of the dark twin. The top photo is from 2017, and we can see various features of the surface. And the bottom photos are taken in 2003 and 2004. And just as a recapitulation, the dark twin is an Earth-sized body, uninhabited, which is directly opposite the Earth on the other side of the sun. And that's why it's generally not visible. However, since Nibiru entered our inner solar system in the year 2003 and started to cause perturbations in the orbit of the Earth, we have begun to get glimpses of the dark twin in various years. And so we know something is out there. But of course, the scientific community is not discussing it for various reasons we don't have to go into now. You probably, excuse me, you're probably unaware that the dark twin has come back into the news. That's the Nibiru news, the Notes on Nibiru news, not the mainstream media, of course. And we'll go to the next slide to find out what's been happening. Okay, you can see these photos at the top were taken a few months ago, actually January this year. They're both from Idaho, and the one on the left obviously is blue. That's normally the color that the dark twin appears. The photo on the right is reddish, which is an unusual color for the dark twin, but the text will explain why it appears red. This is from a post on Zetatalk from last month. An unenhanced photo taken in broad daylight is showing the dark twin looming close to the Earth. That photo will be in the next slide, so we'll get to that soon. Photos of the twin look down along their shared orbit. In this case, the twin is at a distance, so it's usually seen as a monster persona. In other words, it appears bigger in the sky than it actually is, and that's because the light rays bend out and then return to the Earth. Details of the dark twin surface can be discerned on a monster persona, and we can see these various ripples or whatever you want to call them, irregularities in both photos, which apparently are how the surface of the dark twin actually appears. The dark twin normally is a blue color, as in the left photograph, because it reflects this color while absorbing all else. When the view is cluttered with red dust, it will appear to be red. And what's the red dust? Well, the red dust is from the tail of Nibiru. You may remember that Nibiru has a brownish red tail. That tail is very, very long, millions of miles long. Goodness only knows. So the photo on the right is colored red because of the tail of Nibiru casting a reddish tone over the dark twin, which normally appears blue, as in the left photo. Next slide, please. All right, something quite extraordinary occurred on the 24th or 25th of June. It involved a meeting between the Earth and the dark twin. And of course, you wouldn't have heard a whisper about that in the media. Sorry. And the so-called alternative media have failed miserably again to record this. They've pretty well discredited themselves, in my opinion anyway, quite to a very high degree by their non-coverage of Nibiru. But that's another matter. Okay, quote is from Zetatalk. All heliplots. Now, what is a heliplot? A heliplot is what used to be called a seismograph, or yes, a seismograph. In other words, it is a recording of a physical disturbance, earth shock waves, which are often used to track earthquakes, volcanoes, whatever. I was not actually familiar with the word heliplot. Apparently, it's a relatively new term. I am more familiar with seismograph, which is the older term, but it's basically the same thing. Okay, all heliplots are showing activity in a similar way worldwide on the 24th of June. Looks like the world just got bumped or something and everything jiggled. Quakes show just a few quakes in Asia. There was apparently a quake, I think, in the Philippines. I think Chandra sent me a link a couple of days ago about that.
Interesting, Zach, that the longitude of Marble Bar in the Philippines would be fairly similar, I think.
Okay,
So it may well
good.
be that what's happened that's been registered in Marble Bar has ricocheted up to the Philippines.
Well, that could well be. The
Hmm.
the heliplots, as you can see, one is from Marble Bar, WA. Then there's the Midway Island from the American possession, and then Narrogin, which is somewhere in Australia. I've never heard of that before, so I don't really know. But you can see significant Earth activity, significant movement in those heliplots.
Hmm.
Next slide, please. And excuse me, I just want to close the door here. There's a little bit of disturbance.
Yeah, I just wonder what, it's interesting that like
Okay.
Nevada and Marble Bar, if,
Okay, you can see that on the left, this is from somewhere in Nevada. That sort of is almost blackout. That's almost blackout. That's very rare. That's very rare unless you're around the epicenter of an earthquake, and reasonably strong one as well. So the earth was really jiggling or ringing, whatever, in Nevada. The Marble Bar heliplot is also significant, but not quite as severe. So it was happening in different degrees and levels of intensity right around the world. On the 24th here and the 25th in the United States. Next slide, please. All right. In this June 2025 photo, and you can see it was taken in a place in Illinois, the state of Illinois, called Oak Park. The sun is to the right. That's the right of the photo. Out of the picture, we can't see the sun, of course. With sunlight reflecting off the clouds at the left, we can see the clouds on the left, clearly marked. This places the time of day in the afternoon, with the dark twin looming close and blending in with the blue sky. And that's a fairly large image, or what Zedetok would call a monster persona of the dark twin. It's like it's hovering in the sky, so close you could almost reach out and touch it. Now, this is the significant paragraph from Zedetok, which really is quite extraordinary in my opinion. As noted on the heliplots, on this day the globe experienced a jolt in that all plots had a slight jitter. Global shuddering occurs when a megaquake happens somewhere on the crust, causing the globe to ring like a bell in response. but no such quake happened on this day in June, save for the quake in the Philippines. Instead, the globe has been bumped by the dark twin, which incited the gravity repulsion force. And that last sentence is truly extraordinary. They're talking about the dark twin bumping into the Earth. Now, when they say bumping, it doesn't actually mean physical contact, because according to Zetatalk, planets of a certain size emit both a attractive magnetic force and also a repulsive magnetic force. And that's difficult for us to understand. It's not really covered in science. The level of science we have at this point in time doesn't really cover that phenomena, but big enough planets attract in one sense, but when they get close enough to a certain distance, and that would depend, of course, on the size of the planet, there's a repulsive force. So the way I interpret it, and that last sentence is indeed open to various levels of interpretation, the way I interpret it is that the repulsive force, both of the Earth and the dark twin, came into effect on the 24th/25th and sent, and the result on the Earth was that all the heliplots around the planet started ringing like a bell. Now, that is quite an extraordinary statement, if you believe it.
You know, Zachary,
You may choose not to. Yes?
it reminds me, as a healer, when you're cleansing someone's aura and chakras, there's two ways you do it. First of all, you draw the negative energy out. That's sort of, and then you send your direct pure energy in. So it sounds like it's an auric relationship between the dark twin and the earth that, to my mind, is very similar to what happens in a healing.
Auric relationship, that's a wonderful phrase, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. So thank you, Chandra, for that comment. Let's go to the next slide.
Zach, also, could I just, I don't know, I'm just sitting here thinking, could the dark twin be, because Ananda talked a lot about Earth 2, and that at some point people will be taken from the Earth and go to Earth 2. And I'm just wondering if there's some kind of link between those two things.
But if you remember what Ananda said, she said Earth 2 is far out in space, far, far out in space. So it's not the dark twin.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's right. She said not in our solar system.
Did she? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, moving to a slightly different matter and trying to digest the amazing information, the incredible information about the Earth ringing like a bell with its contact, with its auric interaction with the dark twin. The question arises, with all this stuff happening, and of course, none of it's being reported, the mainstream media won't touch it, and the alternative media won't touch it either. So we're left basically with just a very few sources. But the question remains, how will the Council of Worlds announce Nibiru to humanity? Okay, and the photograph here is of Nancy Leader. Now, she is the channel. She's based in Wisconsin in the United States. She's been channeling this stuff since 1995. So she has churned out an amazing amount of information. In my opinion, with about an accuracy rate of around 90%. It's not 100% accurate. So don't make the mistake of thinking that the information from Zeta Talk is the word of God. It's not. And the misses where she's missed, and she's made some bad misses, let's be honest, mainly in the political sphere, political arena. And I can't go into details, but anyway, that's the way I see it. But when she talks about Nibiru, when she talks about earth changes, it is pretty solid, 98% accurate in my opinion. And I've been studying this stuff for 14 years now. All right. Here's what she has posted recently on her Zeta Talk website. I, Nancy, have been aware that the Council of Worlds could alert mankind of Nibiru's approach if they would choose to do so. One effective sign would be skyfire round the globe on the day or night side, such that this could not be blamed on the sun in some manner. And in regard to Skyfire, I covered that briefly some weeks ago. These very strange instances of eruptions or fires or whatever in the sky, and they're Nibiru based, Nibiru caused. Can't go into detail on that, but we have photographs of them from many parts of the world. I asked the Zetas if and when such a sign might occur and got this vision on the 8th of June. We have had the trumpets of Kiev and the horns of Belarus, the howling Tampa Bay and the dragon in the mountains of China, and the drums of Puerto Rico and the howling in Saskatoon, that's Saskatchewan in Canada. All right, now all those references are to strange sounds, howling, trumpets, horns, drums, appearing to come from nowhere. And those have all been caused because of the stresses and strains and stretches of the tectonic plates being stretched in various parts of the world and producing these sounds. And we have audio recordings of them. I chose not to try to include those in this lecture, but we have all that, and they remain unexplained. Science can't explain them. So those are the references to which she refers. But these sounds are all land-based. Again, they are caused by the tectonic stretching of the tectonic plates, the crushing of tectonic plates together, and once again, it's all earth-based. It's all tectonic plate produced. But these are not sky-based. So this vision was a surprise to me. There will be sounds. Now that's her vision. That's her prediction or prophecy, if you wish. Now, I tend to believe that this will probably come to pass, but the big question is how? How, when, and where? Will it be global, as she claims? Well, stay tuned, folks. We shall see about whether that transpires as predicted or not. Next slide, please. Okay, she had a dream or inner visual from June 8th regarding the Nibiru announcement. And the COW, that's the Council of Worlds hand. This is quote, "Morning, did I have an interesting visual from the Zetas when drifting off to sleep last night in alpha brainwave asking about how Nibiru would be revealed, the timeline, etc. What I got was a visual of a sound coming from the sky like a foghorn all around the world or big regions at a time. Remember those trumpet sounds like the dragon in the hills of China or bodies of water like Kiev Reservoir or Tampa Bay?" And again, those are various instances which I can't cover in detail, but they produce these very strange sounds which were heard by thousands of people, but no explanation from the scientist. But the sound will be deeper, a louder, deeper sound. Then the vision included flashes of light high up, like lightning somewhat, but no lightning seen. First the lightning, then the sound as light travels faster than sound. Then a third vision was hail peppering down, not ice, but debris. I think this is tail swipe. And once again, Nibiru has a very, very long tail with a lot of particles in it, some as tiny as dust, some bigger like pebbles or small pieces of rock, up to what could be called boulder sized. And this stuff is magnetized and it's floating around in the tail. So that's responsible for a lot of the strange phenomena we've been seeing around the planet for the last 30 years, but which science cannot explain. Okay, I think this is tail swipe. Petrol burn on the upper atmosphere causing air to vibrate, so foghorn. I asked when. I was given a vision of crops like corn being harvested, so in late summer or early fall, but it seems starting now and increasing in frequency. So things are really starting to happen all over the planet in a big way. And of course, again, the authorities are completely silent about it. And the alternative media, which should be filling the void, has miserably failed, in my opinion, to do the job either. Next slide, please. All right, just in reference to the dragons growling or the dragon sounds from mountains in China, this dates back to July of 2020, about 5 years ago. It occurred in the province of Guizhou, which is a southern province in China, as you can see in the map. And this is from a website called Strange Sounds, a quote from that website. "Thousands of villagers in China have flocked to search for what they thought was a mysterious creature after hearing loud noises that apparently sounded like a dragon's growling. A recent footage shows curious locals swarming to the top of the mountain in Juishui. I think that's, well, that's probably not the correct pronunciation, but that's the best I can do. Juishui of China's southwestern province, Guizhou, while the supposedly mystical beasts can be heard making the roaring noises. Now that's what thousands of people heard. The next slide shows the official explanation, which is so ridiculous. I just had to include it. So next slide, please. And this is from that same website, Strange Sound. Zoologists later revealed that the sound was in fact coming from a type of small bird called the yellow-legged button quail. Ah, mystery solved. Hardly bigger than a sparrow, the little ground birds have a disproportionately loud song. During the breeding season, the females repeatedly utter the booming hoots, which can be heard at a distance as far as 100 meters. The expert conclusion was confirmed by some villagers who had spotted the animals while they were making the noise. A local primary school teacher said it hummed twice or 3 times repeatedly every 6 or 7 minutes. The sound was very deep. I thought it was quite strange as well. A dozen of villagers followed the sound to the cornfield and chased down a yellowbird with a really short tail. So that's the answer, folks. That's the real explanation, the scientific explanation, no less. Nothing to do with dragons growling. It's just this little small bird making these amazingly loud sounds. What a load of BS. Next slide, please. All right, this is from Zetatalk post in May of 2023. Signs of distress in the geology of central China began to appear in 2020 when the dragon roared in China's southwest province of Guizhou. Now, what also has been happening a lot in China and other parts of the world as well, not so well reported, certainly not what has been happening in China, which are big sinkholes appearing all over the place. Now, this is from the bottom section is from a website called the Epoch Times, titled Sudden Sinkhole Outbreak Raises Fear in China, from June of 2010, so about 15 years ago. The Chinese have discovered at least 8 sinkholes that suddenly have formed in the past 2 weeks across their country, and many more have appeared during the past 2 months. What are sinkholes? What causes sinkholes according to Zetatalk? It's the tectonic stresses underneath, the tectonic plate stresses, which cause these holes, these sinkholes, to suddenly appear. And they've been appearing all over the planet, really. I haven't actually heard of any appearing here in Australia, which is good news for us because it means that the tectonic plate on which the nation rests, the Australian tectonic plate, is generally stable. It's not bending or breaking or stressing. But in other parts of the world, that is certainly not the case. And those tectonic plates are undergoing great stresses, great strains, as I've mentioned in previous lectures. And as a result, we're seeing more and more sinkholes popping up. And not just in China, but in other nations as well. But not really so much reported in the media, of course. They want to keep this stuff quiet. Next slide, please. All right, this is from the book of Revelations. It's only a partial quote. Revelations 8, there's a whole lot which I couldn't record just due to time limitations. And the 7 angels which had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth. And the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. That is both a historical account as well as for what happened when Nibiru passed close to the earth the last time, about 1600 BC, as well as prediction for what's coming in the future. Now, the other quote is from the Egyptian Kolbrin, which is sort of an Egyptian Bible, you could say. You could look it up on the internet. It's a book which is not well known, well discussed. The days of stillness were followed by a time when the noise of trumpeting and shrilling was heard in the heavens, and the people became as frightened beasts without a headsman. The doom shape thundered sharply in the heavens and shot out bright lightnings. I assume that the doom shape refers to Nibiru. Not sure, but that's my assumption. Then a voice like 10,000 trumpets was heard. The whole of the land moved and mountains melted. The sky itself roared like 10,000 lions in agony. And it was in 1600 BC, around the time of Moses, that Nibiru last hit town, and I'd covered that in one of my first lectures. And this is an account of actually what happened. So it's happened before, 1600 BC, we're on the cusp of it, the verge of it happening again, in my opinion. Next slide, please. Now, with all that's gone on during recent years and decades, all that's happening now, and once again, legacy media, alternative media are completely silent. They don't want to talk about it. Various predictions for what will transpire in the near future. Wouldn't you think it's high time that the authorities were just a little more transparent with we the people and the masses of humanity? Well, some people might think that, but the reality is no way. They're doubling down on the cover-up. What is the NOAA? It's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. It's an organization in America which basically covers weather changes, weather predictions, and they control a lot of the satellites that are up there, the American satellites, which feed back images from space. So it's a way of predicting weather. The images from space, images of the Earth caught in space are beamed back and become part of the weather predictions. Well, you wouldn't have heard it because it wasn't reported here, and I doubt if many people in America know this. On the 29th of June, just a few days ago, the authorities in America announced that at the end of July, all meteorological data collected by the satellites under the NOAA control, that data will no longer be available. Interesting. I wonder why they're doing that. Next slide, please. All right, this is from a very recent ZetaTalk post. Why would NOAA suddenly cut off public access to the data their satellites provide? This costs them nothing. They state this is not a budgetary issue. There's only one explanation, and that is that they do not want the public to know the extent of the daily Earth wobble and the extent of the plate movements being caused by Nibiru. And that is the explanation in a nutshell. They don't want us to know. They want to keep us dumb, ignorant, stupefied, and just receptive to the garbage which they're pumping out. In short, this is to delay awareness of Nibiru's presence and approach. In addition, any views of Nibiru the NOAA satellites could provide will be removed from public view. So shut it down, man. Shut it down, keep the masses dumb and dumber, and we'll completely deny the presence of Nibiru, which is causing all these amazing and occasionally shocking changes around the planet. Next slide, please. The junta understandably wants to delay panic as long as possible. Now, when they talk about the junta, that is the military junta, which seized control from President Obama in a secret silent coup in October of 2015. And they have been running the show in one way or the other, in some ways or the other, since that point in time. And that's a very long and very complex topic. Maybe one of these days I'll prepare a lecture on that. But for the moment, let's just say that the military junta took over control of running many of the organizations and agencies of the government in that October 2015 silent coup. And they have been running the show from behind the scenes since then. And so, once again, it's a very long, very complex story. Meanwhile, President Trump is attempting to settle all wars around the globe. Well, maybe. And the problem here's where I start to differ with ZetaTalk. Nancy Leader and ZetaTalk have this apparently idealized image of President Trump as this great leader, wonderful visionary, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy that anymore, especially what we've seen the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, last month. No way. I'm sorry. I can't accept that. Get his big, beautiful bill into law. That's the budget for the United States. So that the world can run automatic under martial law when Nibiru was admitted. Oh, well, that's interesting. When Nibiru is admitted, and they'll have to do it sooner or later because the changes in the Earth, the unexplained phenomena are becoming so common now, caught on film, caught on camera, video, whatever, right around the world. And there's no explanation. The scientists can't explain it. Or if they do explain it, like in the case of the dragon roaring in central China in 2020, being caused by this little bird, this little quail or whatever. It's so absurd that it boggles the mind. Okay, by taking away access to current NOAA satellite data, the junta is forcing the public to rely upon historical data or upon what can be seen from the ground. And we're seeing a lot from the ground. Now, this is the interesting, very interesting and provocative last sentence. All this can be argued and debated. All this can be argued and debated. You can argue it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. I think it's a terrible thing that since the authorities first learned about Nibiru and the Nibiru approach of Nibiru, and that dates from an article in December 1983 appearing in the Washington Post. So for over 40 years, they learned about this in sometime in 83, but they've been covering this up. And as we get closer to the pole shift, they're doubling down on their efforts to cover it up. And I think that's horrible, quite frankly. I don't think it's a good thing at all. I don't support Trump either in the cover up, because that's what he's doing, or his so-called peacemaking efforts, attempting to settle all wars. And he has, let's be honest, failed to a large extent in doing that. And you could argue that for days or weeks. So you can argue it and debate it. So what's going to happen when Nibiru is admitted, according to this toast? Well, they are going to declare martial law in America. And of course, because we're dumb enough here in Australia to think that America is such a great, wonderful nation and everything that they do, we should imitate, it's probably going to happen here. And that's the bad news, I'm afraid. And that leads into a metaphysical discussion of what were the real aims and objectives of the COVID era lockdowns here in Victoria, other states in Australia, other nations, starting in early 2021. Well, according to Zetatalk, that was a trial run. First of all, the COVID pandemic was a scam. I refer to it normally as the COVID scamdemic. It was a hoax of mammoth proportions that had been years in preparation, years. They prepared it for years and years. And of course, they had the vaccines ready to go, or almost ready to go, blah, blah, blah. And we can, talk about this for hours or days even. But one of the main objectives, and possibly the main objective of the lockdowns, was a trial to see how the population would respond to martial law. Because that's, in effect, what we saw here in Victoria, Victoria being the worst state in the entire nation, sad to say, and Melbourne, the most lockdown city in the entire world, sad to say. It was a trial run by the predatory elitist and their little puppets, dictator Dan Andrews, Scummo Morrison, and that whole lot of scumbag politicians, just to see how will the public react to a de facto martial law. And they took their notes. And when Nibiru was admitted, finally, because they'll have to, they can't deny it forever, then they'll bring in martial law again. Now, that may be disquieting, discomforting, or whatever, but that's the way I see it, and I can't really try to sugarcoat it or gloss it over. Okay, that's the end of today's lecture, and if there are any questions, I shall try to answer them.